This video is another programming video. So if you're interested in coding, programming your own trading strategies so that you can then test, develop, optimize, improve, then I think you're going to like this video. If you're not interested in programming, then you might want to watch it anyway, because I give away the rules to a couple of different versions of a profitable trading strategy. I'm going to show you how to program a strategy which I featured in a video. It's quite an older video. It's one that I made back in January 2021. The strategy works on the 30-minute chart of pound-dollar forex pair, and we get entry and exit signals using an oscillator called Williams %R, created by Larry Williams. We use the oscillator, or Williams %R, to identify reversal points in the market, so that when the oscillator is showing that the market's overbought, that's our signal to sell short. When it's showing that the market's oversold, then that's our signals to buy. To keep the programming shorter and simpler, I'm only going to include the basic rules for the stop and reverse strategy, and I'm going to include a stop loss. However, do stay until the end of the video, because I'm going to make a slight modification as well, which happens to work better on a different time frame. Let's first have a look at the strategy rules and how the trades appear on the chart. Then we'll go over to MultiCharts, we'll write the code and then apply it to the chart. Okay, we're looking at the 30-minute chart of pound-dollar, for those of you who remember the last video. And down here we've got our Williams %R, or Williams % range oscillator. We've got it set at quite a fast period for Williams %R of 10 periods. That's the length of the indicator. And we've got our levels set at 90 and 10. If you're looking at this on maybe TradingView, sometimes the values are different, whereas MultiCharts goes from 0 down the bottom to 100 up the top. TradingView, I think, goes from 0 being the top and minus 100 down the bottom. But essentially, we're just looking at the upper 10% and the lower 10%, so 90, 10, okay? And the entries are dead simple. We just want to see a cross into either the upper 10% or the lower 10%. So looking at this example here, we've crossed above the 90 level, and then on the open the next bar, we've gone short. We stay short until we get a cross down below the lower level of 10, and we go long. We're long until we get the cross above. So there we go, short. We've got all these extra crosses above, but we're already short, so we can't go short again. So we stay short until we get the cross down below, and we exit the short position and we enter a new long position. And on this strategy, we were using a 250 pip stop loss. Let's just have a look at the equity curve of this basic strategy. And you can see it's quite a nice equity curve, isn't it? In fact, I published this video in January 2021. So looking on the equity curve, from about this point here, we got January 2021. So anything to the right-hand side, this part here, this was all completely out of sample. Okay, so we can see that the behaviour of pound-dollar using the Williams %R has continued, which is exactly what we want when we're creating a trading strategy. Pretty straightforward to identify the trade entries and exits on the chart, isn't it? Now we go over to the Powerlanguage editor, which is where we write the code in MultiCharts before we apply it to the chart. And as I always say, I'm not a professional programmer. I don't come from a programming background. However, I have been using MultiCharts since 2016, and I've written hundreds and hundreds of strategies, and I've gotten pretty good at getting MultiCharts to do what I want it to do. There's probably better ways to write the code than how I do it. However, I found that it works for me in both backtesting and live automated trading. Okay, so we're in the Powerlanguage editor. This is where we write out our code. And you can see here I've just put a note which is started with a // demo for the video programming Williams %R reversal strategy for the 30-minute chart of pound-dollar. In fact, it will work on any time frame. Anything which begins / is not actually calculated by MultiCharts. It's completely ignored because it's just there for our benefit to write notes in the code when we're creating the code. So the first thing I'm going to do is write out the inputs. Now the inputs are values which are adjustable once we've got the code or the strategy applied onto the chart window, and I'll show you how we can adjust those once we've got it onto the chart. So we're using the indicator or the oscillator, Williams percentile, and I've actually got it set at a length of 10, but I'm going to make that length adjustable within the code. I don't think I did any optimizations on the length in the original video, but this allows us to optimize or adjust within the code if we wish to. So we're going to call this something like my percent R length, and we need to give it a value. I'm going to start off giving it that value of 10 because we're not going to adjust it. The next thing I want to do is look at those upper and lower thresholds of where the oscillator crosses to enter. Remember, we're using the values of 10 and 90. So we're going to say my overbought level is going to be equal to 90, and my oversold level is going to be equal to 10. And the last thing I'm going to include is a stop loss, which I'm going to call my stop. And at the moment it's going to have a value of 0. And we finish the line with a semicolon, and you can see that these inputs have turned red, and that's to show that they're working and there's no errors. Now we're going to look at our entry conditions. Again, this is just a note. So long entry. And remember, our entry is if Williams percentile oscillator crosses down below that 10 level, that lower 10%, that's our entry to go long. So MultiCharts has already got percentile or Williams percentile programmed into it, so we don't have to calculate the indicator every time we want to use it. And it's actually called percent, and if I look down here, it actually comes up, it's actually called percentile. We do have to say what length the indicator is going to be, and we're saying that it wants to be a length of 10. So we're actually going to use this input instead of actually writing the value. So I'm going to say my percent R length. That's the length of the percentile. If the percentile crosses below that oversold level, so I'm going to write my oversold level, so that's the level of 10 at the moment, then buy next bar at market. And that's it. That's nice and easy. That's our long entry condition. Short entry is going to be if percent R, my percent length stays the same. This time, if it crosses above my, and we're going to use overbought level this time, then sell short next bar at market. And that's it for our entry and also our exit conditions, because now this is a stop and reverse strategy. We buy when it crosses down below the oversold level, but when it crosses above the overbought level, we actually exit the long position and we open a new short position, and vice versa. That's what stop and reverse is. The last thing we want to do is just set a stop loss. And we tell MultiCharts that we want to set this per contract. Now I'm going to say if my stop, and my stop, remember, is our input here, if it's above 0, then set stop loss. That's a MultiCharts function, stop loss, but we need to give stop loss a value. So we're going to give it the value of whatever we use as our input for my stop. So what we're saying is, if this stays at 0, then there's no stop loss whatsoever. But it's saying if that goes above 0, so if we put that as, say, 100 pips, then set the stop loss at 100 pips. Okay. Now we just need to compile the strategy, make sure there's no errors, and we can see it's compiled successfully. Now we just need to go over and apply it to the chart. And remembering what we've called our strategy, JG demo, Williams percentile 2, go back to our chart, and I have actually already applied it, and I've got it here, but it's not actually turned on at the moment. So I'm going to turn it on, and if I double click, we can go in and format these inputs. So you'll notice here we've got in order which we wrote them, my %R length, overbought level, oversold level, and my stop. If we go back to the editor, there's our inputs in that same order. So we've got the length of the %R set at 10, we're not going to change that, and the overbought and oversold levels, we're not going to change that, and our stop loss is set at 250 pips. The value of 0.025 is 250 pips when we're looking at pound dollar. So that should now apply to the chart. There it is on the chart. You've already seen the equity curve. Remember, we have got a very low average trade of only 2.4 pips or $24. And those of you who watched the original video will remember that I made some additional filters. I introduced a time window and some different daily filters, which brought up that average trade value. But to keep the code short, I've just kept it at the bare bones for the minute. However, ideally, we do want a larger average trade value than $24. Next, I'm going to introduce an additional trade filter. And the way I'm going to program it is going to be switchable when we're on the chart, so that we can directly compare using the filter versus not using the filter. Then I'll put that strategy on a 2-hour chart this time, and the results from the 2-hour chart are better than the 30-minute chart, using both the filter and not using the filter. But just before I show you that, if you'd like to learn some more rule-based strategies, I've put together a 22-page Beat the Market strategy guidebook, in which I've detailed 3 more profitable rule-based strategies. At the moment, you can access that for free using the link in the description down below. For those of you who have already got the book, or for those of you who want to take your trading to the next level, you might want to enroll in my popular trading course. And in that course, there's 6 more usable trading strategies too. Links for that are also down below. Right, let's go and program that filter into our code and see how it works on the 2-hour chart. Okay, before I apply this strategy to a 2-hour chart of pound dollar, I'm actually going to include some daily filters. And I'm going to show you exactly how I code them. But not only how I code them, but how we can make them switchable on and off. So the first thing I want to do is give us an input for that kind of switch. So I'm going to call it my daily filter. And I'm going to give it a value of 0 to start with. Now, this is our original entry and exit conditions. They can stay the same because they're going to be our unfiltered conditions. I'm just going to alter this note to say my conditions without filter. Now, what I'm going to do is use our daily filter input here. So I'm going to say if my daily filter equals 0, then begin. What that's saying is anything below this, do only if my daily filter, which is our input, is set to 0. And we have to finish that off with an end of code. So now that daily filter has to be set to 0 for this to work. If that input was set to anything else but 0, then this wouldn't work. Okay. Now let's write the code with a daily filter. Now what I'm going to do, just to save time, I'm actually going to copy and paste what I've already written here and just amend it. So I've just pasted that. But we're going to say entry conditions, we'll say with a filter, and we're going to say use the filter if we set our input to 1 this time. So anything below this is only going to occur if we've got my daily filter input set to 1. So long entry, this is our basic entry, but we also want a daily filter. So let's say if, now our daily filter for long trades is, we're looking for a white candle on the daily chart the day before we look for these trades. Now MultiCharts can reference daily candles, or in this case we're actually going to use session candles, and we're going to create this filter by saying that if the close, and we're going to say S because that references the session, and we're going to use 1, so that's saying the previous session or 1 session before our entry. If that close was greater than the open of the session 1 session ago, that means there's going to be a white
session or white daily candle. And we also want to see this same condition. Then we buy next bar at market. And we're going to use a kind of opposite filter for the shorts. So you've guessed it. If the close of the session before was less than the open of the session before, and the percent R crosses above the overbought level, then sell short next bar at market. And then we've got our end. So everything after this begin and before this end happens if we set our my daily filter to 1. And the same here, everything happens if we set my daily filter to 0. So let's compile that, make sure that that's going to work, and it's compiled successfully. So let's go and have a look at this modified code on the chart now. Now I will just change this to a 120-minute chart because this strategy works pretty well on the 120-minute or the 2-hour chart. And let's just have a look at our inputs. The length and the overbought, oversold levels being the same. I've actually changed the stop loss now. I've made it a little bit bigger. It's 400 pips now on the 2-hour chart. And that switchable filter, look, is set to 0. So at the moment, we're saying that we're not going to use the daily filter or that session filter. So let's have a look at the results for that. We notice that the average trade is a lot larger than that of the 30-minute chart. We've got an average trade of $56. Equity curve is very nice as well. Looking at the close to close equity, long curve, short curve. So that's good. Now let's try switching on that daily filter. So remember, all we need to do is select 1, and this will give us less trades, obviously, because we're filtering out trades. There's the equity curve, a little bit more choppy, but it's certainly moving in the right direction. Looking at the total trade analysis, we've got a much larger average trade now of $83, so that's good. Largest losing trade is around about the 400 pip mark where our stop loss is. I mentioned before that on the 30-minute chart we had a low average trade of about $26, which wasn't really enough when we include some trading costs. So we just include some trading costs now. Let's include a couple of pips of costs because we are using pound dollar. The spreads are pretty tight on that. So we're going to put 1 pip in and 1 pip out, so a total of 2. And let's look at the performance report. Equity curve is still good. That's with the daily filter, remember. In fact, we can look at the direct differences by just running a very quick optimization on the input of my daily filter. So this is the switch. So if we start at 0 and end at 1 in a step of 1, that's going to show us the results from using the daily filter and not using the daily filter. We optimize that, and we can see here this is our daily filter switch 0 and 1, and we can see that not using the filter makes us more money overall, more net profit, because we've got a lot more trades. Obviously when we're filtering the trades we're going to have less trades. We've got a higher percent profitable when we're not using the filter, but the average trade is lower. And that's essentially what we were aiming for with the filter, was increasing that average trade value. Remember, we've got some costs included here as well. And lastly, I just want to show you that if we're happy with this strategy and we actually want to go live, we just have to hit this button which turns on the live trading. We will have to make sure that we're connected properly to our broker and data source if the data source is going to be different. And we do need to make sure that we've got our position size correctly selected. But switching on live trading is that easy with MultiCharts.
That's how you program or code a trading strategy using MultiCharts. And on Tradestation, the process is very similar. Once the program is written, we can very quickly run backtests on different markets and different timeframes to see how our idea works. And we can make adjustments and optimizations if we wish to. There are lots of different software or platforms which can do this type of thing, but not all of them are as simple and powerful as MultiCharts, but I guess you really do get what you pay for. Anyway, thanks for staying to the end of the video. I really hope you've enjoyed it and perhaps learned something. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos a little bit like this. Hopefully, I'll see you next week, but until then, this is Jared Goodwin, and thank you.